Hello and welcome to News Now on TV360. I am Thelma Okoro. Oil workers in Nigeria under the aegis of Pengasan have suspended their nationwide strike action. The strike began on Thursday over issues that include oil sector reforms and pay. About 10,000 members of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengasan, which includes refinery workers and office staff, took part in the strike action. There had been fears that the strike action could lead to fuel scarcity and disrupt crude oil production. Talks with government officials, including the oil minister, the labor minister and NNPC's new managing director, were held on Monday and Tuesday. A communique issued after the meeting shows that issues discussed included joint venture funding and cash call arrears, which the union said had stalled the creation of new jobs and investment in the oil and gas sector. Spokesperson of the Benue State Police Command, Moses Yamu, has said 22 deaths were recorded in the clash between herdsmen and residents in Okum and Logo communities in the state. While speaking to journalists, he denied claims by residents that 81 people were killed in the renewed attacks by herdsmen. The incident occurred last week in Logo local community in Benue State. The police has since deployed a team of its officials to the affected communities. Over the past few months, suspected herdsmen have killed hundreds of Nigerians in Benue, Niger, Enugu and Plateau states. The Attorney General of the Federation and Chief Justice of Nigeria, Abubakar Milani, has appeared before the Nigerian Senate. Malami had been invited to explain why the Senate President Bukola Saraki and his deputy Ike Ekweremadu were being tried for alleged forgery of Senate standing rules. The Senate had threatened to issue an arrest warrant after he failed to appear before them 2 times. At the hearing on Wednesday, Malami said his inability to show up for previous summons was out of sheer circumstances. He said the case against the principal officers of the Nigerian Senate was filed to curb abuse of institutional governing documents. Saraki and his deputy are accused of illegally altering the Senate standing rule used in electing leaders and inaugurating the upper legislative chamber on June 9, 2015. Some Nigerian lawmakers have denied planning to impeach Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari from office. Ali Uwamako, a senator representing Sokoto North in the Senate, said the reports were false and malicious. Uwamako had hosted a series of meetings at his Abuja home over the past few weeks. He said rather than planning to impeach the president, the meetings were held to find a solution to the frosty relationship between the executive and legislature. Also denying the impeachment story, Dino Melaye, the senator from Kogi State, said reports that he was planning to initiate impeachment proceedings against President Muhammadu Buhari were simply not true. A bill which proposes immunity for leaders of the National Assembly has passed first reading at the House of Reps. Over the past few weeks, the bill had caused controversy among Nigerian lawyers. The bill is aimed at granting immunity for presiding officers of the legislature. Sponsor of the bill, Leo Ogo, who is the minority leader of the House, said by providing immunity for the leadership of the National Assembly, the independence of the legislature will be guaranteed. However, Majority Leader Femi Gbajabiamila argued that the timing of the legislation was not right. The Nigerian Bar Association has warned lawyers in the country to take the ethics of their profession seriously while discharging their duties. This was part of the discussions held in Abuja at a one-day workshop on anti-corruption, ethics of the legal profession and justice sector. The workshop was held to bridge the gap between anti-graft agencies and lawyers accused of unethical conduct in the defense of their clients.
There is a need for us to look inward and review our ethical standards, which I believe will result in greater self-awareness and accountability. Our fight against corruption is a natural reaction to the revilement that the public holds for such practice. However, we cannot cure the disease when we ourselves are afflicted. Our noble profession is the inheritor of the proud legacy of our forebears who strove to entrench respect for the rule of law and protect the average Nigerian from egregious abuses to their human rights. These were the principles that enabled the average Nigerian to implicitly repose his confidence in our justice system.
Defense counsel, my dear colleagues, should avoid ending up a partner in the crime of his client by sharing the guilt and the proceeds of that crime. A lawyer's role should not degenerate from that of a legitimate defense counsel to becoming an accomplice after the fact. A lawyer who is enthusiastic in the defense of his client crosses the line from being a lawyer to becoming a co-defendant and will be prosecuted as such. We should avoid ending up committing fraud, money laundering, perjury, and so on in the process of trying to defend our clients.
Many persons have taken to the airwaves to malign lawyers because lawyers kicked against Section 5 of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act that requires lawyers to report any payment of $1,000 or is equivalent to the requisite unit of the EFCC. We think it is very important that lawyers have a role to play in ensuring that every action that is geared towards money laundering is not encouraged in our society. But any provision of a law that turns a lawyer into an informant against his client should be objected to all men of goodwill. Lawyers are not information gatherers for either the EFCC, the police, or the ICPC. We must draw a line. This battle has been fought in America and Canada, and Nigeria is not an exception. What lawyers are saying is that we are not saying we are not open to scrutiny, that if it is indeed revealed that money laundering is involved in a particular so-called legal brief, that we should be immune. No. But we are saying we cannot be expected to rat on our clients. We can't be gathering information for the EFCC. But if a transaction appears suspicious, a lawyer owes a duty to report.
The Nigerian police force has paraded 11 men suspected of kidnapping Sierra Leone's envoy to Nigeria. Major General Alfred Nelson Williams retired. The Sierra Leonean envoy was kidnapped on Friday, July 1st, and later regained his freedom on July 5th, 2016. While parading the suspect, the police said further investigation into the matter is still ongoing. The suspected kidnappers in police custody are Rabiu Yusuf, who is a male aged 45 years old. He has also been identified as the gang leader. Garba Abubakar, who is male and aged 27 years old. Yusuf Adamu, aged 20 years old. Husseini Musa, aged 25 years old. Shuaibu Idris, aged 35 years old. Usman Bello, aged 20 years old. Musa Ali, aged 45 years old. Muhammadu Abubakar, aged 30 years old. Suleiman Abubakar, aged 25 years old. Gambo Ibrahim, aged 25 years old, as well as Balarabi Muhammadu, aged 32 years old. Troops of the Nigerian Army have repelled an attack by members of the Boko Haram sect in Borno State, northeast Nigeria. The operation was carried out by troops of 119 Task Force Battalion stationed in Kagarawa community in the northeast region. A statement issued by Army spokesperson Colonel Sani Usman on Tuesday said the attack started at about 6:30 p.m. and ended at about 9:30 p.m. Sadly, 2 soldiers were killed during the battle and 7 others were seriously injured. According to Colonel Usman, the success of repelling the attack was due to support from the Nigerian and Chadian Air Force fighter jets. President Muhammad Buhari has appointed Hadiza Bala Usman as the Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA. Bala Usman takes over from Habib Abdullahi, who was sacked by the President. She is a co-convener of the advocacy group Bring Back Our Girls. Her appointment is effective July 11, 2016. Until her appointment, 40-year-old Hadiza was serving as the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai. Nigeria's President Muhammad Buhari has flagged off the 2017 Army Day celebrations in Gusau, the Zamfara state capital. All entry and exit positions within the state are for now closely monitored by security agencies. There are also speculations that the president would commission the military task force during his visit to the state. The Nigerian Army Day is an annual event typically held in July to to celebrate members of the Nigerian Army who lost their lives during battle and the current 7 members of the Army. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyema says the government will investigate cases of human rights abuse in the ongoing counterinsurgency campaign against Boko Haram. The International Criminal Court (ICC) had in April this year begun investigations against the Nigerian military. Local and international groups including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have accused the military of illegal killings and incarcerations.
Conflict situation, there are going to be excesses. It's in the nature of conflict, especially in very remote areas. The challenge is for the government not to condone any excesses and to put in place a transparent and a rigorous mechanism, one for addressing them if they occur, and also a mechanism for preventing them occurring. So with the Northeast in particular, the strategy of the government is to, as much as possible in the areas that have been regained by the security forces, to get in as much as possible the civilian authorities, police and so forth, and have it much more demilitarized as much as possible. Where there are cases of abuses or excesses, that these have to be investigated thoroughly and dispassionately, and appropriate and stringent measures taken. We put in place the mechanisms for that, and as I said, embedding a human rights desk within the military, so that it's institutionalized and becomes part of the culture of our security forces, and in particular training also for our security forces on issues of human rights. So we recognize that there were these excesses. But as I said, the most important thing is that the government is really determined, to stamp them out and to really address them objectively and forcefully, and institutionalize, as I said, very importantly, that culture within the security services.
The Nigerian Association of Ex-Service Pensioners has urged its members to shun any form of planned protests. Addressing a press conference in Abuja, the president of the association, Prince Zubairi, noted that after a dialogue with the Nigerian government, the government agreed to take adequate action to remedy the various pension irregularities.
Considering the shoddy and subhuman pension conditions to which the military pensioners have been subjected for the past 13 years, however, we have decided against protest for now because the pension havoc had already been wreaked on the military pensioners before the present administration assumed office. Moreover, we have discussed with the present government through their relevant agencies, defense headquarters, and they have made important concessions which, when implemented, will bring relief to the military pensioners. It is based on the outcome of the recent dialogue and the concessions made that the leadership of our association reasoned that any form of protest is not logical for now. We have therefore decided that no member of the Association of Ex-Service Pensioners will embark on any protest for now. Fortunately, part of the government's concession to us is the implementation of 20.37, which was illegally deducted from the original 53.37%. The government has also promised to look into the possibility of paying the remaining 6 quarters of the 33% arrears in 2 installments to pave way for the next salary review, which is already overdue.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at business and international stories. Don't go away.
From the multi-award-winning filmmaker.
What were you doing at the beach resort?
The first ever Pan-African movie.
We've all met at company retreats in the past before.
Each one with a mission and a strategy to determine who will be the next CEO.
I googled you last night and I came up with nothing. Nada.
I'm off the grid. I fly below the signal.
Coming to the cinemas from the 15th of July 2016.
10 VIP CEO premiere tickets and 20 autographed DVDs up for grabs when you pay for the OLX Do It For Me service from 6th of June to 1st of July 2016. Visit olx.com.ng to book a champ now.
OLX, sell it!
Corruption not in my country.
Hello? Yeah, I found your wallet in front of a supermarket. Meet me at Apple Junction. Yes, I'll be waiting for you.
Now we find out. Two of us.
Thank you very much, officer. You know, it's surprising that men like you still exist in the police force.
Yes, so...
Oh, yes.
This is just a token of my appreciation.
Oh, no. You don't need to do this. We are only doing our job.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Now I know police is really my friend.
Yes.
Friend. Hey. Which came out with this one? I don't understand.
You know your problem. You are greedy. I'm a policeman who is doing his job. All forms of corruption in the force. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. You're watching TV360 News now. To business stories. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has called on African leaders to hasten action on removing barriers causing hindrances to economic and trade integration on the continent. Africa Regional Head of the body, Joy Kitagakwa, told members of the Nigerian business community under the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry that the removal will go a long way to promote business in Africa. Our correspondent, Abiola Ismail, has more on that story.
The economic integration and market expansions among the countries in the European Union circle have for decades served as a pointer to individual nations' growth and development. But in Africa, the case has not been the same. For too long, private sector organizations and government institutions have confined themselves to the comfort of their individual countries. But in these days of raging forces of globalization, this individualistic disposition and outlook may not be sustainable.
Let us therefore be focused to give attention.
That much summarizes this view of Joy Kategwa, the African Regional Head of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development at Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, at the gathering where she called on African leaders to begin to broaden their perspectives and think beyond their individual countries in response to the challenges of economic integration on the continent.
What is left now is for African Union member states, but also organizations supporting the African agenda, to go through the how question. And this is precisely the work we're doing, supporting the African Union Commission, supporting regional economic communities like ECOWAS, to structure, to think about how to structure an African market in a manner that creates these opportunities that we're talking about, but that also allows for countries to manage the process of being part of this African market in a manner that creates opportunities still for industrialization.
The president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Nike Akonde, also shared a similar view when she challenged African countries to start developing their sub-regions through trade integration and industrializing the continent.
We need to broaden our perspectives and thinking beyond our individual countries. We should begin to develop not only regional, but also continental and global outlook for our businesses and economies.
On what Nigeria has been doing to get on board, a director in the Ministry of Transport, Solomon Ishaya, said government is focusing on reviving the transport sector by rehabilitating existing transport infrastructures. He also said Nigeria is working to sign the Bazaar Agreement with landlocked countries to make for easier access for Nigerian businessmen.
Provision of freight offices, transportation stations in line with the ECOWAS protocol on interstate transit to facilitate the congestion at border towns. The Nigerian Shippers Council is harmonizing port charges in the Nigerian ports. These are some of the measures that were recommended at the Borderless Conference, which the ministry is trying to implement.
Achieving economic integration has always posed a serious bottleneck for African leaders. Yet, analysts say it holds the key to unleashing the potentials of the continent and fast-track economic growth. Despite all the positives, the continent's leaders have just not managed to translate all the discussions on integration into action. Abiola Ismail, TV360, Lagos.
It's close to 3 weeks now since UK voted to leave the EU. Economic experts and investors in Nigeria have been holding several meetings to look at the potential impact Brexit could have on Africa's largest economy. One thing seen so far from all the discussions on the issue is that there is no definite agreement on the magnitude of the impact it could have on the Nigerian economy and just how the country could deal with any negative consequence. Now, this next report looks at some of the issues coming through from some of the discussions held on Brexit.
One place where Nigeria felt the almost instant impact of Brexit was the country's stock exchange. The capital market had been on a bullish run, but just a day after Britain voted to leave the EU, shares tumbled. The NSE All Share Index went down minus 1.36%. Market capitalization closed in the negative territory, going down from 10.5 trillion naira to 10.67 trillion naira. The market is yet to recover since then.
The Nigerian market is internationalized. It does not operate in isolation. It operates in an international financial system. So whatever is affecting the international financial system, obviously is going to affect the Nigerian market.
The situation compels the country's Chartered Institute of Bankers to call this gathering of economists, investors and market analysts to discuss the likely negative impact and how to mitigate it.
The reactions you saw in the market is because the market, for the first time, did not price in the possibility of a Brexit. Markets don't normally tolerate uncertainty. In this one case, everybody went on the 80%, only because it does not follow the principles we were all taught, rational decision making.
5.5% of our imports is from UK. Then 5.9% of our crude oil export ends up in UK. So you have 5.5 imports, 5.9 exports. So how does it play out for us? This is something we also need to consider. What will be the capacity of a slowing down British economy to still take on imports from Nigeria? And then, of course, what is their capacity to produce those high-end industrial goods that we eventually import in Nigeria?
Diaspora remittances are going to be affected because if performance of the UK market is not good, right? It means that Nigerians in the diaspora earning money will have enough to repatriate to us, and it will have implications. And if it's not go to other parts of the world, it will affect us.
Remittances actually constitute quite a significant part of our inward review. But to be honest, even the remittances, just given some of the issues we are seeing globally, it was reversing. So it will have an impact on remittances for us.
A number of Nigerian banks operate branches in the UK. There are fears Brexit could affect their operations, but to what extent is what no one could tell for now.
We need to first look at the quantum of business that they are doing in the UK. Because what's the contribution from those countries, from Britain, from the activities in Britain, that it makes to their P&L, I think to me is not really sufficient to affect it so much. But since some of the banks out there are their corresponding banks, then definitely we will see an effect happening. And we've seen in recent time whereby JP Morgan was talking about exiting UK as their headquarters. And if that happens, then definitely there may be some impact as well. But to me, in the meantime, there may not really be a direct impact for now.
The overall impact of Brexit is still a matter of conjecture. Quite a number of analysts here say any negative impact would be negligible because Britain is not such a big trading partner of Nigeria, and it does not appear the government is fretting over the issue, as it has so far not released any comprehensive plan of dealing with any likely negative impact of Britain exiting the EU.
Still on Brexit, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs says Africa should ignore the example of Brexit and forge ahead with its plans for integrations. There have been concerns that the fallout of Brexit could have potential impact on integration efforts across the world, but Geoffrey Onyema has denied this. Instead, he says Brexit offers Africa the opportunity to forge ahead with its integration plan and free trade zone within the continent.
The reason why you have integration is because you feel that it is a win-win situation, and especially economically. You are promoting a larger market, for your exports. So if we're looking at it from Nigeria's point of view, an access to a large market for our manufactured goods and for trade is of economic benefit, direct economic benefit to this country, as it is to countries around the world, which is why you have these free trade zones, you have economic cooperation and integration, because you're creating a larger market and promoting trade, which equals, improvement in the economic lives of your citizens. So the fact that the UK has chosen to leave the EU, I think the jury is still out, and we will see whether it is for its economic benefit. It has other reasons, such as sovereignty issues, immigration issues, that it felt were of great concern. But I think from the African point of view, it has to be seen as a positive, the promotion of greater economic trade. As you know, at the moment, there's only 10% of the trade in Africa is intra-African trade within Africa. So that leaves a large space for greater economic activity within the continent, which translates to greater economic prosperity.
Oil prices fell on Wednesday after the International Energy Agency warned that a global supply glut threatened a price recovery. Data has also shown an unexpected weekly gain in U.S. crude stocks. Brent oil was down 74 cents at $47.73 per barrel, while U.S. crude traded at $46.25 per barrel. Saudi Energy Minister Khalid Al-Falih has said the oil industry needed a price above $50 per barrel to sustain investments, but added that downward pressure would prevail because of an inventory glut. South Sudan's vice president has withdrawn with his troops to outside of Juba, the country's capital. A spokesperson for the vice president, Riek Machar, said the leader has no plans for war. This comes as after 4 days of heavy fighting between rival forces left more than 270 people dead. The UN says a ceasefire announced 3 days ago by Vice President Salva Kiir and his rival, Vice President Riek Machar, appeared to be holding. South Sudan became independent from Sudan in 2011, but its short history has been marred by civil war. A standing ovation was given to David Cameron at the UK Parliament as he bowed out of office. After 6 years in office, Cameron resigned as British Prime Minister Wednesday following the UK's vote to leave the EU. Conservative members of the Parliament rose as one to applaud David Cameron at the end of his session as Prime Minister. Defending his achievements in office, he said there had been many amazing moments during his 6 years in power. Home Secretary Theresa May will succeed Cameron in the coming days. After taking office, May's maiden task as Prime Minister is to form a government with the monumental task of liberating Britain from the European Union and uniting a fractured nation. Moving on to sports stories now, the Athletes Federation of Nigeria, AFN, has released a 38-member list that will represent the country in this year's Rio Olympic Games, scheduled to be held in Brazil. Blessing Okabare and Sheye Ogunlewe top the list of the athletes for the tournament. Okabare will compete in the 100-meter, 200-meter and long jump events and will be gunning for her second Olympic medal in Rio after jumping to a bronze medal finish in her debut in 2008 in Beijing. The International Olympics Committee says the Brazilian capital Rio is ready to host the 27th Summer Olympic Games. The Games, which start on August 5th, has been overshadowed by fears of the Zika virus, which has plagued the country since the start of the year, and also a political crisis, which led to the removal of President Dilma Rousseff. The WHO had in May this year rejected calls to postpone the Games because of the Zika virus outbreak. The global health body has said that the call would not significantly alter the spread of the virus, which is linked to serious birth defects. Now, the IOC, after its final inspection of the city, says Rio is indeed ready for action. Well, that's all we have on news now. We thank you very much for watching. I am Thelma Okuru.